Hey everybody, Matt Johnson here. It's been 5 years since little Summer Wells went missing.
She could be being tormented every day, tortured every day. She could be locked in a basement with chains. She could be going the rounds with drug dealers. There's all kinds of things, but there is a small bit of hope.
There's a reason why there's no little hope, is because there is no hope that she is alive.
Maybe they know something, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. It's rare that you're going to see someone that's going to be giving you all these probabilities. It's rare.
That's body language expert Susan Constantine breaking down some of the first interviews done by Summer Wells' parents. Are they hiding something? Do they know more?
Liar, liar, pants on fire. I'm telling you.
But first, do me a favor. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share the episode. Now the case of Summer Wells. Here to help break it all down, we have a very special guest. We have Susan Constantine, jury consultant, body language expert, speaker, and author of How to Spot a Liar in 7 Seconds or Less. We'll talk about it at the end of this program. And my good friend, thank you for being here as we're talking about missing Summer Wells and talking about the interviews that her parents have gave. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm looking forward to looking at the tapes together here and sharing with your viewers what we found.
Yeah, here is the little girl. She was missing 5 years ago, so it's the 5-year sad anniversary of her disappearance. Here is the latest poster from the Missing and Exploited Children's site of what she may look like today. And there has been a recent development as well with her dad posting this or releasing this statement to the public saying, Candus and I would like to thank each person who cares about our daughter Summer. Your kindness and prayers mean a lot. We know that only God can restore our family. We love you, Summer. Waylon, Wyatt, Josie. God always wins. God bless you all. Any thoughts on just the statement alone?
You know, oftentimes people, when they go through horrible events, you know, that it's kind of like the jailhouse religion, right? They don't become overly religious until sometimes these traumatic events, right? So, I mean, I'm not faulting that by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's wonderful that, you know, they're actually, you know, asking for help and thanking everyone. However, that's also a deceptive indicator, just to let you know. Anytime we call it, whether using religion or God help us, honestly, swear to God, and that sort of thing, anytime they put religion in there is one red flag. Doesn't mean a lot. It just gives me one red flag. Not deception, but it is a deception indicator if it's in a cluster.
This is one of the first interviews that Candus, the mother, gave, as well as Don, the father. We're going to start with some of her initial statements in saying what she saw happen initially or her story from the beginning. And I want to get your thoughts.
I know she didn't walk away from this property by herself or off this yard by her swing. I feel in my heart that somebody has came up here and took her, has lured her away from here.
It seems to me both of these parents right away, when we hear their statements, they're automatically running to the conclusion that she was abducted.
Yes, that was going to be in my notes. So I put it in there, and that's one of the things that they do, right? These are what we call probability qualifiers. So who else did that was Murdoch, right? Murdoch did the same thing. You know, there was this lawsuit, and that had to be what would cause this to happen. They go right to the end. So when we look at statement analysis, I'm looking at how they structure it, where they begin, because that tells you what part do they begin their story, where they think it happens. That first line is really important that comes out of their mouth. A lot of times that is the reason why something occurred. So when you understand a statement analysis, why did they subconsciously select to start there and then go through all this? Is a probability qualifier. So something happened at that point that created her, why she's missing. Why she went there is really interesting how the brain works when the person goes back to the story that they think or what they're trying to recall or construct. So put that on a shelf. Now, let's look at her demeanor. When I'm looking at her facial expressions, the expression list, first of all, I need to rule out she hadn't had a stroke. I don't know. There's something very odd with her demeanor, and especially in her mouth. So I think that there's some sort of medical issue. So we have to consider that could be the reasons why she's not showing any affect. Okay. But the other thing is that you never see the forehead move, ever. There's no horizontal wrinkles and sadness and concern. Her eyebrow should go up. You should see some distressors. She's not looking upwards where she's trying to visualize when something happened. She's speaking out what we call from the auditory plane, which is from ear to ear. And there's not a sense of recall from visual. When you're thinking of something that happened in the past or what happened, you're going to speak and you're going to look up because you're going to pull it from your visual memory. She's not doing that. So she's giving you a lot of probability qualifiers. I pulled out a whole list of stuff we can talk about later, because a lot of what they're doing is, and especially in the beginning language when they constructed that statement, it's lots of what we call content behavioral analysis. It's actually called CBCA. So there's a lot of violations within the language and the choice of language, how they construct their story. Going to in past tense, right? They're going to past tense, but where she picked the story up is, and what she said isn't relevant. It's not relevant. She should be talking about what's now. Then, if asked more questions, she could have gone back, but she didn't. She came right out of the gate trying to build the storyline, build the visual, create the probabilities of what could have occurred.
Yeah, the saying that it wasn't them, that it's someone else, and going to the high level that it was an abduction from a home on a dead-end street in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so I want to know whether or not she's lying when she goes through the elements of what happened leading up to discovering the daughter was gone. So let me play that.
Me and my mother and her were planting flowers. And we went in after we got done washing our hands, and she got a piece of candy from Grandma, and she wanted to go back over and see her brothers. And I said, okay. And I walked her all the way over to the porch, and I watched her walk into the kitchen where the boys were watching TV. And I told the boys, I said, watch Summer, I'll be back. And within 2 minutes, I came back. And I asked the boys where their sister was, and they said, she went downstairs, Mom, to play with her toys in the playroom. I said, okay. And I yelled downstairs for her a couple times, and I didn't get no answer, which was unusual because usually she always answers me. And so I went down there to check, and she was nowhere in sight. She was just gone.
Okay, so again, to your point, I've seen her in other interviews. She appears to be a little bit sedated or something here. So again, I don't know if that's medication or self-medicating after a tragic event, but the word choice we can also look at. And so what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm looking at a nonlinear reproduction of the stories. Okay. So when somebody is telling us a lie, a lot of times, and you'll see those Casey Anthony, they're very linear, right? From beginning to end, and they walk you all the way through because they're trying to give you a picture, a rolling movie of step by step by step, because they built this case. They built this visual of what happened. She jumps around. So it's not unusual that when somebody is being truthful, they will go forward, backwards, back up, go to the side, come back around, because it's non-linear reproduction, right? So not everything that she's saying is untrue. There are parts of her story that are true. When a person is adding these unusual events like getting a piece of candy or brushing their teeth or, picking up a ball. I'm just using an example. She didn't say those other two, but she says a piece of candy. It's irrelevant because that now is linear reproduction, right? Because there was probably a point where she picked up a piece of candy because she actually put it into her story. So when I look at statement analysis, I go, what is the significance of that candy? I bet you anything that kid took a piece of candy and it ticked her off. I bet you anything the fact that she got that candy and she probably wasn't ever supposed to have it ticked her off. Something has to do with that piece of candy. That's just my own personal opinion based on, looking at statements. The fact that it's there is really unusual. When she refers to me, my mother, and her is the last person. Me, my mother, and her, not even the daughter's name. Think about the order of importance. Okay, I would say my husband, Nick, or my daughter, Mackenzie, or Mackenzie. I wouldn't say me, my husband, and her went outside to go play with Bo. Liar, pants on fire. I'm telling you. It's, well, when people will put their words together and subconsciously, they don't even realize what they're doing because you can't control everything that comes out of your mouth. And they think that if I give you all these little specific little details, that's adding to the story and being very specific. But it's in that specificity that is really interesting. So way too much information. Reproduction of it was unusual. Her wording and minimizing her daughter and putting her at the tail end when she's referring to him. There's a lot of problems in that statement.
Really disturbing. And thank you for breaking that down. The fact that she didn't even use the name of the daughter. And, when I refer to people, I always say their name and then I. I didn't even think about that, but that's really alarming. In this same interview, again, this is one of the first interviews after the daughter went missing, is the husband. He's sitting right next to her, Dawn. He makes some very unusual statements, to say the least, and I want to get your take on it.
If there's any way, if you can find it in your heart to please release her somehow, I don't know how you might do that. I mean, because you're probably scared of going to prison for the rest of your life and everything else, I'm sure. But please find it in your heart, have mercy, and find a way of letting her go and where we can get her back. And just please have mercy on her and, and us and her brothers. And she's such a loving, good spirit. Please don't hurt her. Please let her.
Okay, what stood out with his statements and then also the mom next to him making the eye glances?
Those are confirmation glances because she's checking in, non-verbally checking in because they probably got a story down and she's just these little confirmation glances. The other thing is that his voice is very monotone, right? There's no sense of urgency. There's no breaking in his vocal tone. His flow is flat, really weird, in such a high emotional state at this point. The other thing, again, when we start talking about, he is actually creating empathy for the alleged abductor. I know it's probably pretty hard, that you're scared. Well, I think maybe that he's reflecting, if it's himself, projecting, okay? So it's interesting how, again, language is so telling. And if we were to break this down word for word, I could go really deep with this. But however, on a kind of high level looking down quickly, the empathy is off. No monotone, the confirmation glances. We see this a lot with husbands and wives that might be involved in a missing child, and they've already got the story down, and there's just this natural darting over to see what they're thinking or how they're emoting, and she's checking in. But the empathizing with the abductor is really bizarre, and overall, his demeanor is very flat. And it doesn't create any sort of urgency. I don't know what he's thinking, but he's doing not a very good job in selling it to me.
So you don't believe them?
I don't believe him. I think you got
And
that.
also, one of the weird things that I find, I've covered a lot of missing persons cases over the past couple decades as a local reporter and national reporter. And I've seen parents act very differently than this. And I have never heard this in my entire career of where someone jumps to the conclusions as to the situation if abducted their child is at. First off, most parents won't even put their mind in that situation, but he does. So here we go.
Way where she can't be outside or play with a puppy or anything, love nature, and that's my greatest fear, is that she's not able to do any of these things anymore, or that she could possibly, I don't want to think she's dead, but it's a possibility. I don't want to address all the negativity. I just want to focus on the positive, because it's so easy to get, lost in that negativity and stuff, and it's just not worth.
Okay, I have another clip where he goes into more specifics as to what he thinks happened to the daughter. But I mean, I have never heard a parent tell me that in, interviewing them in their house, at their couch, that my child is dead.
Yeah, it's not normal. It defies truthfulness. It defies everything that we found in research of how people speak and the words that they choose about their missing person, missing child. They're usually more empathetic. They're high. Their emotions are high. There's distress written all over their face. They don't start giving you explanations of like what could have happened, the possibility of things happening. To your point, Matt, the reason why you've not seen it is because you probably have not sat down with somebody that just took their child like this one and is lying about it. Like, I mean, you've met a lot of very, very scary people, but when you say you've never heard that before, it's rare that you're going to see someone that's going to be giving you all these probabilities. It's rare. And part of, when I look at these two, I wouldn't call them the most educated. Okay. So we have to consider the way they speak, the kind of slang they use. That's their normal verbal dictionary. But to kind of pull out of the air of all these other things, and there's some other pieces that I know you're going to talk about. I mean, if you were there and you heard that, I mean, I think your hair would stand straight up from your head. like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't get past that if I heard that. And, again, there's no charges yet in this case. She's still considered missing. It's still an open investigation. So that was initially one of the first interviews that this couple had gave. Since then, their other children have been taken from the home. And since then, it's still an active investigation. And one of the most recent interviews was a couple years ago where, again, Don Wells was asked if his family had anything to do with the disappearance and if he's not sharing the full story. And here's what he said.
We spoke to Summer's father, Don, back in 2024, as he continues to wonder what happened to his daughter.
She could be being tormented every day, tortured every day. She could be locked in a basement with chains. She could be going the rounds with drug dealers. There's all kinds of things, but there is a small bit of hope that she could be with possibly someone who cares about her. We don't know.
I just can't even imagine being the reporter and hearing that.
I would have been freaking out. I'd be going like, did I just hear what I just heard him say, that, could be put into a dungeon or, held captive? I mean, the fact that his brain would go right there, to go to such extreme, not like, well, maybe she ran away from home or that she got lost or something to that nature. But he goes right to the most extreme, most horrific. Does he watch true crime? Is that what this is? That he just watches a lot of true crime stories and he goes right there? He's trying, again, these are probability qualifiers. That's what he's doing. He's giving you all these reasons what could have occurred. But then he says, he's got this little small bit of hope. Well, that's interesting, because when we even think about the Savannah Guthrie case, they have a lot of hope, not a little bit of hope. There's a reason why there's no little hope, is because there is no hope that she is alive.
Maybe they know something, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. You know, they literally get caught in their own words, their own language. You know. Anyway, again, lack of affect. I mean, it's very common. It's still the same thing. Lack of affect, no emotional ups and downs, probability qualifiers, giving the little bit of hope, which means no hope at all. And he's also thinking about it in as if she's already dead, so she hadn't been found. So he's already assuming that she's gone and captured and tortured and all these things. He's assuming all these things, but why would you be thinking about something that's as a probability that you don't even know yet? I mean, to offer all of that additional information, extraneous information, is problematic.
And very disturbing. I just don't know how else to characterize it. I just find it so very disturbing that someone's mind goes into that place for a loved one, let alone your child. You know, right. I wouldn't even be able to think of those possibilities. I'm just thinking, you know, getting the word out. I'm out there every single day after my shift, after work, I'm looking. But, you know, the dungeon thing also reminds me of the fact that her bedroom was in the basement of the home. And that's where she was last seen going into, was the basement of the home, which, you know, as a child would think, or sometimes say maybe it's a dungeon to them. So I don't know the wording there.
I'm putting myself into, are these occurrences that happen, but he's actually the perpetrator? Is he the abductor? Is he the one that is put?
And again, we don't know. There's no charges.
No, I know we're not. But these are very unusual words to be and probabilities to be talking about when you don't have any certainty of where she is and no sense of urgency to try to find her. So it's interesting when you think of language analysis. A lot of times liars, what they do is they literally will give you truthful information, even if it is incriminating. I know that sounds weird, but a lot of times they will talk about events that occurred to release cognitive load so they can give you partial truth, but then they give you additional extraneous information. So what we find is, like, I'll give you an example. Let's just say, well, my daughter was missing at 3, it was last seen at 3:00. And she went to her friend's house. And then they went here and they went there. What we find in statement analysis is, like, even when they say a number, like 3 is the number one lying number, but when they naturally give you particular information, like the candy, it has something to do with the occurrence. So when we look at this, I mean, you think about statement analysis, it's like looking at a crime scene. We look at language and we literally draw lines and correlations with language and how it shifts and changes, and certain standout words and how they actually tell the story. And literally within that text, if I were to take all of his text of what he said, I could probably tell you when she went missing, how she went missing.
That's fascinating.
That's what I'm saying. It is fascinating science. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
There's one more clip that I wanted to play for you. Again, this is as most recent as it can be. They stopped doing interviews. It was a couple years ago as well. But let me get your take on it, because I'm sure that this is what he would tell us, is that he had nothing to do with it.
So you can say you had nothing to do with your daughter?
Yeah, I absolutely can.
I absolutely can.
I was waiting for you to mention the words that were used.
I absolutely can. Okay, so that was a yes or no answer. Agreed, Matt? I mean, you know.
Right.
Yes or no? I absolutely can. Okay, let's reverse it. I absolutely can say that I don't know. I mean, that's really what he was saying, but it was a form of an omission. When you use a bolstering word like absolutely, Those are bolstering words to try to nail in his answer. So anytime you see that bolstering word right after can is problematic. So you don't need to add that extra layer of certainty. It's not necessary. He was asked a question, yes or no. It was the yes or no question. Do you know where she is? Yes or no. It's not a hard question, Matt. If
It's
you know
just no. You just say no. And it's kind of like when you give analysis of people on the stand. And when you talk about that, the language that they use, and then also when they'll say something opposite of what their body language is.
Yeah, their head not goes the opposite. And it's true when you see that too. And I do hold weight to that, okay? But also sometimes if their baseline is they shake their head no with yes or no questions, then you got to throw that out because it's only one clue. But when it is an absolute like, yes, I did, which is yes. But if you go, yes, I did, at the same time you're going, that's incongruent. But put the language with the head mob movement, it's what I look at is inconsistencies. I look for incongruencies, things that don't match up. And they should sync together. Your words and your language, your body language, all of that, your emotion should all tell a story that is congruent. And when it's incongruent, that's where I get them. That's where I catch them.
Well, we can all agree on one thing. We hope that we get answers soon and that this little girl is recovered and hopefully found safe. Thank you for your analysis on this case. I find it very fascinating. Not only are you a jury consultant, body language expert, and speaker, but you're the author of this book, How to Spot a Liar in 7 Seconds or Less. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is coming out in February. It is now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can order it now. You can pre-order it for $23 because I think after February it goes up to $30. I cover all kinds of high-profile trials. And as I was breaking down the analysis here, you're going to learn the actual method, step by step, so you can learn how to spot a liar in 7 seconds or less.
It's a good read. You're a great person and a friend of the program. I'm going to have all the links in my show notes, so check it out. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Again, anyone with any information, please call the number on your screen, 1-800-TBI-FIND, or you can call Crime Stoppers and remain anonymous. Let's hope for her safe return. I'll keep you updated on this case. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.